With a relatively disappointing start to the season for the Blackhawks, Patrick Kane has quickly become one of the most fascinating players available at this year's NHL Trade Deadline. But what could he possibly get back for Chicago, and what could a Patrick Kane trade look like? We're going to be answering every single one of those questions with 5 different Patrick Kane mock trades, so watch till the end for every single one of them and hit that subscribe button to the Sportsnet YouTube channel for the best sports coverage around. Now, before we get into the mock trades, let's first talk about Patrick Kane's value and the interest that goes along with it. A few months ago, you probably could have said that Patrick Kane would have gotten a first-round pick, a top prospect, another top prospect, and another prospect on top of that. But I think as of right now, as we get closer to the trade deadline, Kane's value might be a lot lower than some people are expecting. Now, offensively, I still think Patrick Kane can bring a ton, especially in the playmaking side of the game. This year, in 45 games for Chicago, he has 9 goals, 25 assists, 34 points, and is a minus 26, being in his age 34 season. Now, there's a couple of reasons why the Patrick Kane trade price might not be as huge as some people are expecting, and one of the reasons is that cap hit. At $10.5 million, even though he won't be a big long-term investment being a rental, that cap hit will still keep a lot of teams out of the race, especially since they'd have to give up a lot more to retain salary and maybe give up a player as well, going the other way to make the cap hit work. Now, there's also the serious problem of Patrick Kane's nagging hip injury, and Arthur Staple of The Athletic was talking about that situation, saying that the entire league knows that Kane needs hip surgery. Whether that will come this season or in the offseason, we'll have to wait and see, but there is a Patrick Kane situation where he isn't 100%. And that's going to limit a lot of teams from trading him and trading big assets for him too. But even so, that name value, that Patrick Kane name value will still go a long way. And even with a nagging hip injury, he has 34 points in 45 games on this Chicago Blackhawks team. Last time I checked, they aren't very good. So I still think a ton of teams out there will want to have Kane on their roster, especially since there won't be a long-term investment there. At the very least, you can have him on this year and have him as a big playoff push. Now let's go on to the first mock trade here, and this one to me is pretty simple, involving the New York Rangers, and it's either if they want to do this or not. And I think for the Rangers, they're in an interesting situation here. To me, I'd much rather they go after a player like Timo Meier that they could potentially lock up long term. But if the Rangers do want a rental, and they do want obviously that chemistry with Artemi Panarin, then I think Patrick Kane would be a really fascinating fit, even if I think they would want more defense onto that top 6 with Patrick Kane not really playing much. But to me, I think it all kind of depends on if the Rangers want to trade one specific player and if there's any interest in him at all. Going on to the mock trade with the New York Rangers to New York, Patrick Kane will go 50% retain. In exchange to Chicago, they'll get a 2023 first rounder and top prospect Brennan Othmann. And to me, it all depends on if the Rangers are going to trade Othmann or not. I think he's a very, very good prospect, maybe not in that elite territory, but has a great nose for the net and great in all situations goal scorer. He's a guy that I think Chicago would definitely like to target. But to me, this whole deal, whether the Rangers get Kane or not, all hinges on Othmann, because I think that's who the Blackhawks will really target. Now let's go on to another Metro team here. Next up in the New Jersey Devils, another team that I think could either go between Timo Meier or Patrick Kane. They've been also floating the idea of going for a forward that has more turn, maybe a Brock Besser perhaps, but to me, I think it'll be between the 2 high-end guys. And I think New Jersey has a lot of assets that Chicago would love. First things first, for the Devils, they'll acquire Patrick Kane, 50% retain. In exchange to Chicago, they'll get a 2023 first, a 2024 third rounder, Igor Sredogovich, which will make the cap work, as well as Chicago getting a younger forward, and young prospect Graham Clark. And to me, I think there's a lot of different situations where I think New Jersey would like to make a trade like this. There isn't a top prospect going back per se, but I think that first rounder will really be coveted by Chicago. Still in the same though, Graham Clark is pretty young and has been doing some pretty good things in the AHL, and Sredogovich might be one of the best NHL players the Blackhawks could get back if they want to go more that route. On top of a 3rd round pick, you get 2 top 3 round picks, and I think for Chicago, that could be something they really covet as well. Now, going on to the third mock trade here for Patrick Kane, I do not want this to happen in a million years, but you know what? I think the Dallas Stars might be one of the most likely teams to end up trading for Patrick Kane. Of course, my favorite team in Dallas, I would be devastated, absolutely devastated if they went after Patrick Kane. Out of all the players they could go after, I'd much rather have even a Jake McCabe, even if he could only play on the left side, than Patrick Kane, honestly. I feel like they could definitely use some defensive boost, but I feel like the Stars would go after our big name in this trade deadline, and Patrick Kane would probably be one of those guys, unfortunately. Another part of this that would be unfortunate is that I think for Chicago, they'll kind of have a in-division tax, where because the Stars and Blackhawks are in the same division, I don't think they'll really be as easy trading Patrick Kane there, and I think we might see some more assets on top of that because of it. Thinking about that, going onto the trade here and the devastation that would come upon to me for Dallas. They would receive Patrick Kane, 50% retained, and to Chicago, this is interesting, they get a 2024 first rounder, Denis Gurianov, and Maverick Bork. Now, they don't have their 2023 first right now because of the Nils Lundqvist trade, and that would mean a 2024 first round pick could be provided. And to me, that's why we don't see even more assets on top of that, because we already know Dallas is going to make the playoffs this year. That's for sure. So it wouldn't be that high of a pick. But 2024, you have no clue. There are some players that are aging, and maybe that does take a toll. Even if I still think the Stars have a pretty great future, you don't know what happens next season. It's a bunch of magic beans, just like the Ben Sherratt trade. It's risky trading first-round picks a year ahead of time, and I think that will factor in to the actual value here. Denis Gurianov could be a solid NHL player, bring some great speed, and even though a lack of finishing is there, could bring some great quickness. Maverick Bork, on top of that, I think is pretty huge as well. Even though he hasn't been outstanding in the AHL level, he's going to be a really balanced center, I think, at the next level, and maybe as a great third-line center, decent second-line guy. I could see him transforming into that for Chicago, and overall being a pretty good package in a Kane deal. But now let's move on to the fourth Patrick Kane mock trade and go back to the Eastern Conference here. And this is kind of a team that's opened up in the last couple of weeks in the Carolina Hurricanes. Because of the unfortunate Max Pacioretty injury situation, they now have a lot more potential to go after another big guy at this trade deadline. And to me, that's what I would do if I'm Carolina. And they have so many strong defensive forwards that, to me, for Carolina, they'd be the team least impacted by Patrick Kane's poor defensive game, or lack thereof of a defensive game. And to me, I think Carolina would actually be a pretty interesting fit. As for the trade itself, to the Canes, Patrick Kane will go 25% retained, and to the Blackhawks will be a 2023 first rounder, Swedish prospect Noel Gunler, as well as Alexander Nikishin, who right now is unsigned in Russia, but is doing absolutely insane things in the KHL, scoring at an abundant rate. And even though I don't think he'll be a generational prospect, I think on Chicago's power play in the future, he could do some really great things. Noel Gunler as well, doing pretty well in the AHL, was a third-round pick a couple years back. And I think Chicago would also love to have him since he's been playing for the Chicago Wolves, and I would guess that some of their scouts have already seen a lot of those players, Gunler included. But with the Canes having more cap space, this is more of a pure prospect deal, but especially with Nikishin and a first-round pick and Gunler being on top of it, you add a pretty solid forward prospect, a pretty great defensive prospect, and a first-round pick in a pretty great draft. Next up, though, let's go on to the fifth Patrick Kane mock trade, and this is easily the craziest, the wackiest one I have here, so I wanted to save it for last. The Vegas Golden Knights. That's all I'm going to say. Of course, the Vegas Golden Knights would make a wacky, crazy deal. That's what they do. And I think they could do that at this year's trade deadline, potentially going after Patrick Kane, with Mark Stone maybe going on LTIR and being out for potentially the rest of the year. Patrick Kane being out on that top six would be scary. As for the deal itself, I think it'll be a little bit crazy, but just bear in mind whatever I'm going to say. Just hear me out, all right? To Vegas, we'll go Patrick Kane and Jake McCabe, no salary retained. To Chicago will be a 2023 first rounder, a 2023 third rounder, which will be the Buffalo Sabres, Alec Martinez, Brendan Brisson, and Lucas Cormier. Now, this is a huge deal, but to me, for Vegas, this is the type of deal that could really put them over the top. If you add Patrick Kane to that offense, Jake McCabe on that left side of the defense, he would be absolutely perfect there. I think Jake McCabe would be a player that the Golden Knights would really be after, and especially giving up some big salary in Alec Martinez, they'd be able to fit it through if they're going to put Mark Stone on LTIR, and adding Jake McCabe onto that defense would be extraordinary. Just having that solidified defensive two-way guy that you don't have to worry about on that Vegas decor, I think would be absolutely huge. But the price would be astronomical. You're giving up a first, you're giving up a third, and you're giving up two top prospects in Brisson and Cormier. But the way I look at it is with McCabe, he's signed up for one more year than Martinez. With Martinez, he's on for this year and next. But it's also at a much lesser cap hit. With Martinez, he makes more than $5 million, I think 5.7. With McCabe, he makes $4 million for the next 2 seasons afterwards, which, with how strong defensively McCabe is, I think the Golden Knights would really love to have. And even though it is a big asking price, these are two players that would make Vegas so much better. And I think the time is now for the Golden Knights to compete. This is the time. They are truly going for it, and I think this trade would definitely solidify that. But oh boy, those are my Patrick Kane mock trades. let it just sit for a while. Let it just sink in, all these mock trades, and let me know as well in the comments down below. What do you guys agree and disagree with my mock trades, and which one do you see happening at the trade deadline? What do you guys see a Patrick Kane trade looking like? Let us know down below all your thoughts. Of course, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell if you guys enjoyed. Share the video with all the hockey fans you guys know online, and get the trade deadline mock trades out there for all of their hockey needs. And I will see you guys in the next video. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.